if my son drinks a little too much, I can't take him to the edge of town and stone him to death. If my neighbor would come over here and say, hey, the voice of God just told me to kill my son, I need to borrow a knife, I wouldn't make a profit out of him. I would call 911. And this is just telling you that as a society, in the face of persecution, burning at the stake, and everything else, we have grown morally to the point to where we can no longer live by the old laws of the Bible. And I think we just need to look at this and realize that this was written by men, along with the Quran and everything else. It's so patriarchal that it boggles my mind to even think that the creator of the universe would sit down and write a book like this.
What about the idea, you raised the question, what if your child were hit by a drunk driver?
Yeah.
Would you be concerned about the kind of car it was? What's the point in that?
Well, the point is we're all in this together, and we tend to put labels on these different religions, and we're not going down to the fundamental problem. And the fundamental problem is the belief systems that underlie all this. And it really doesn't matter what the belief is, whether it's a Muslim or Jewish or a Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist. At this level, people tend to be sort of drunk with this belief. So if somebody would hit my child, I wouldn't say, "What was that, a Ford or a Chevy or a Muslim?" Or I would want to know the state of mind of that person. And when you look at the state of mind of religious fanatics, religious fundamentals, extremists, they're drunk with this belief. And if you're not talking, now here you have to remember this. For a belief to sustain itself, it has to be believable. So when a belief or a belief system is so far out of touch with reality, with science, with experience, with history, with everything that we know to be real, what it takes to support that belief ends up, well, in the words of Andrew Newberg, Dr. Andrew Newberg is a neuroscientist. He told me it causes brain damage. And I said, Andrew, don't you have a more appropriate neuroscientific word than that? He says, no, it's brain damage. Because what happens is as you make that belief believable, you start cutting yourself off from experience and history and science and everything else. This is actually causing the brain synapses to break. So as those synapses start breaking, remember, if they fire together, they wire together. But if they don't fire, they don't wire. Eventually, your brain goes through an atrophy and starts shrinking. And once that process starts, now you're going to end up with a person that we've always called people like that tunnel vision and narrow-mindedness, myopic, and you almost have to stand right in front of them and use their exact terminology, their exact words for them to hear what you're saying. But if your logic goes and expands beyond what their limiting beliefs can accept, we know now that neurologically they don't even hear what we're talking about. They don't even hear the words sometimes.
I could see you having a problem with specific kinds of miracles that are reported in the Bible, that it's not within your experience, that science would say it's not possible, and you would have, as a result of that, problems with the idea of faith, or specifically blind faith. And you might have problems with, say, the Ten Commandments, where the Bible and biblical scholars prescribe specific kinds of behavior or prohibitions. But what about the idea of just the underlying golden rule, do unto others? Why that would be a bad way to live?
I think that would be a great way to live. And, well, like with the Ten Commandments, the first 4 commandments have nothing to do with morals or anything else. That's about keeping you within the religion. And some of the commandments, like coveting your neighbor's wife or his ox, or in this case, whatever he would have in today's world, I mean, read in Deuteronomy, if you break any of those commandments, that it's death. So that means if my my neighbor comes over and steals my lawnmower, by biblical command, divine sanction, I'm supposed to take his life. And this is what I'm talking about. We cannot live by the literal truth of the Bible anymore.
Okay, Rahasya Poe is my guest. He's the author of To Believe or Not to Believe. We'll jump into more of our discussion of whether religion and science can coexist peacefully, whether there's merit in that proposition when we come back here on Coast to Coast AM. We're talking with Rahasya Poe about his new book, To Believe or Not to Believe, and I'm sure a lot of you are ready to jump at your radio right now because it's talking about very touchy topics. Can science and religion coexist? Is there such a thing as the power of prayer? Is there what is the difference between spirituality and religion? And how does this work around to our political beliefs? Are they as illusory as our religious beliefs? We'll get into those topics and more, then be opening up the phone lines at the top of the hour, so stay with us here on Coast to Coast AM. Rahasya Poe, is there a point at which science and religion can coexist peacefully, agree on at least some basics?
Well, I think actually they're two sides of the same coin. For me, true religion, I'm talking about real religion, because the word religion is the same word as yoga is. It means union, to pull together, to connect. I think real religion, what it does is it gives us, and I use the word faith here, not faith as it's used so much as a license just to simply believe whatever you want to believe because it doesn't have evidence. But, I mean, there is a faith that we have in human nature, and we have to have that moment of faith to step out into the darkness based upon what we've known from the past. And I think this is where religion can come together with science, because religion can push science in a certain kind of a way, and sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong, but science can validate that, and we can either continue that path or pull back from that path.
There's an article that we posted on our website tonight, and I did it on purpose in connection with your interview here. It's about scientists speculating on what is beyond the limits of the universe. If, in fact, the universe is finite, what's on the other side? Is that something that you would classify as unknowable and thus in the realm of faith, or is that the kind of question that science could eventually answer?
Well, I think it's the kind of a question that needs to be asked, and then through scientific process, start taking small steps in that direction. My name, Rahasya, means mystery. It was a name I was given in India, and actually it means something I have to focus on, and I spent so much of my life trying to figure out the mystery, I forgot to live it. And I think life, we forgot to live in this mystery. And science can take us methodically into the future, but the trouble is religion is being left behind because it's really not religion, it's tradition. We have a tradition that dates back to the Iron Age that has been crystallized. And there's so many of us, I use the word spiritual people, that's actually trying to save religion in its truest sense. And I talk to biblical scholars and people that really know the Bible, and none of them take it literally. Of course, I shouldn't use the word none, but most do not take the literal truth of the Bible. They call it a story. I was talking to a rabbi once. He says, hey, it's just a story. What are you getting so entangled in this? And this is the problem. We get so entangled into the story. In my book, what it's really about isn't about beliefs in themselves, whether it's Muslims or Christians or Jewish or Buddhist. It's about the cognitive process of believing anything at all. Because one way to look at this is in a dream, like if we're having a dream, the first step to waking up in that dream is to say to yourself, this is a dream. I'm asleep. Now, at that point, you're not awake, but you've caused a crack in the very foundation of that reality. Well, in this reality, the thing that causes the crack in that foundation is to doubt the illusion. But the trouble is, all of our media, almost everything around us, our financial systems, everything is built to support that illusion. And if you question that illusion, you're called a crackpot or a criminal, or there's all kinds of institutions they can put you in to control you and try to reform you and rehabilitate you back into the social ways of your society, which is basically the illusion. And beliefs, when we make up a belief, all of our beliefs are to reinforce that illusion. And the moment you start questioning that belief, or any belief, it causes the wheels to start turning again, and you start having thoughts. And these thoughts start waking you up. And I can't even begin to tell you how different the world looks once you start realizing that we all wake up on this planet with almost 7 billion people that are also waking up on the planet, and they all have beliefs, and they're living in an illusion and pretending like they're awake and not really realizing that so many of us are asleep. But we are starting to wake, and this is really becoming a crucial matter in today's world, because with everything that's going on, if we don't raise our consciousness to the level that I'm talking about, we're never going to see the crooked politician or the hypocrisy of organized religions. You know, it's the old story that the emperor has no clothes. We need enough people to start speaking out and other people to have doubts and questioning, and all of a sudden you start seeing the truth, and it's right in front of all of us. It's right here. It's not being hid, but we're hiding from it behind our beliefs.
You mentioned how, the Bible maybe shouldn't be taken literally, and even priests and rabbis don't take it all literally, that they look at more as a story or a parable. I read 2 articles today that sort of cast light on that. One was about this new suggestion that God had a wife, that there were references in early biblical literature to a female counterpart that were edited out. The second article dealt with who the real authors of the Bible are. And I know there's been a lot of scholarly work done on that Mark and Matthew and those guys didn't necessarily write the books of the Bible that have their names attached, that it was other people, hundreds of years later, that were influenced by the political and religious situations of their times, that they edited stuff in and took things out. It would be hard to figure how any of that could be taken literally as often as it has been changed.
Yeah, and as we look back, it would be interesting to jump on this too, and it's tempting, but actually in the time period that we're talking about where the Bible was being put together and written, it was a pretty popular thing to do, to put somebody else's name to it. And a lot of times this was done deceptively, but a lot of times it was just the way things were done at the time. But yeah, now they can recognize that there was only 2 or 3 writers for Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and it was written far after the fact. And I think as far as science and religion goes, Einstein once said that science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. And it's a perfect example of this balance that we have to have of left and right hemispheres in our brain. This is why it's so important to save religion, but bring it up to a level to where it should be in the first place. And I think as we do this, we're going to find something really incredible happen within the neurology of our brain, because we're so used to the dichotomy of life, the polarization of everything. We're either Republican or Democrat. We're either this religion or that religion. Everything is either up or down, in or out. And this is because of how our mind has evolved. But something's happening here lately. And when I say lately, probably within the past 200 or 300 years, started actually with the Renaissance, but within the past couple of hundred years, something is starting to bubble up to the surface